Welcome to my birthday crown tutorial. I have the pattern I'm using linked below for you guys. This is the perfect beginner sewing project, and if you're a parent and want to make your child their own little birthday crown, keep watching because I'm going to give you guys an in-depth tutorial on how to make this yourself. I have the pattern linked below so you can just download it and follow along, or if you know how to draft a pattern, you can just draft your own. All right, let's get started. Okay, first we're going to assemble the pattern. You're going to do by printing it out, lining up your pattern pieces and taping it together, and then you're going to carefully cut around the pattern. Make sure before you do all this that you've checked to make sure the pattern has printed out properly to scale. You'll find a 2 by 2 inch square on the pattern where you can make sure that it has been printed to the proper size. Once our pattern's assembled, it's time to cut out our fabric. I personally like placing my pattern piece directly onto the fabric and just tracing it out in fabric marker, and then I just cut around those lines. For this pattern, you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of the pattern in fabric and then 1 piece in either interfacing or quilting batting, depending on how stiff you want your crown. If you plan on quilting your crown, this is the step where you can draw your top stitching lines onto the batting. I like to draw mine at a rough 45-degree angle to make diamond shapes. Once that's all mapped out, you're going to pin your batting to your outer layer of fabric. Set your machine to a long stitch length for the top stitching, and you're just going to stitch along the lines you made with your sewing machine. You should now have a beautifully quilted fabric piece that will serve as the outer layer of our crown. If you plan on adding a name, this is where you can write it out with your fabric marker. Just make sure to always test the fabric marker out on a scrap piece of fabric before you start your project to make sure that it actually does come out of the fabric you chose. It's now time to embroider our name onto our crown using embroidery floss. This is definitely one of the more time-consuming aspects of this project, but it definitely adds quite the punch, so I wouldn't skip over it. I'm just using a split stitch, but feel free to embroider in any manner you choose. When you're all done with the embroidery, we're going to take our second fabric piece and pin it right sides together to the quilted fabric piece. Now take it over to your sewing machine. We're going to want to reset our machine to a regular stitching length. So 2.5 is usually what I like to sew on for regular seams. Since we are going to be sewing around some curves, you can go a little bit smaller to keep it well reinforced. Our seam allowances are a 1/4 inch for this sewing pattern. Either mark them on your piece of fabric with a fabric marker, or you can use your sewing machine foot as a sewing guide. Now, this part can be a bit difficult, working with so many layers of fabric around tight curves, so take your time and know that you can always take some stitches out afterwards or hand sew some areas if you mess up. Now that our crown top is all sewn together, we are going to trim our seam allowances. You're going to want to trim them nice and close to remove some of that excess bulk, and you're also going to want to clip your seam allowances on the inside points of the curves. That way it'll lay nice and flat when it's time to turn it right sides out. Once we have it turned out, take it over to your iron and press it out nice and flat. Don't be afraid to give it a really good pressing and a lot of steam to help everything sit where it's supposed to. Now we're going to turn the crown back inside out, making sure not to turn the points in. We want to make sure that those are kept nice and crisp, so we'll only be turning it over and matching the raw edges. Then you're just going to sew along that bottom edge again with a 1/4 inch length seam allowance. Once you're done, you'll trim those seam allowances and turn it right sides out. This part can be a bit finicky since it's such a small item to turn inside out, but just take your time. Once it's turned right sides out, give it another good pressing. Be careful with the fabric you choose. The one I chose may have been a little bit thick for this project. A quilting cotton would be a better weight and let you really get the crown to lay flat. Now we're going to cut our ties. Take your tie pattern and use it to cut out 2 pieces of fabric. Take those 2 pieces, fold them in half, and sew a 1/4 inch away from the raw edge, or further away depending on how wide you want your ties to be. When you reach the end, you'll turn your tie over and sew a 1/4 inch along the short end to create a closed end to your tie. Now there's a couple ways to do this next part, the easiest of which is to purchase a spaghetti strap maker, which is what I'm using here. I'll link it in the video for you guys. Another way is to tie a safety pin at the closed end and shimmy it through the tube until all the fabric is pulled through. Once your straps are all turned out, you'll give them a good pressing. Now to attach our ties, we're going to fold over the raw edges of our crown edge and sandwich the raw edge of our ties in between those pieces of fabric. Give it another good pressing, pin it, and then you're going to top stitch along the edge to secure it all in place. Alternatively, you can hand stitch for a more seamless look with a slip stitch. Repeat on the other side of your crown, and now it's time to add your pom-poms if you have them. I've linked the ones I bought below. You're just going to attach these by hand by going up through the center of the pom-pom and then back down through the center, and then by picking up the edge of your crown point, pulling your thread taut, going back and forth a few times to make sure it's very secure, and then tying it off in a knot. And there you have it. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting more sewing tutorials as well as patterns. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment and I will get back to you guys. Okay, now both my sons have their own little birthday crown. Let me know which one is your favorite. And thank you guys so much for watching.